3 days. That's how long it took for the HOA president to try and steal my lake. I hadn't even unpacked my bags when she rolled up my gravel driveway, demanding I hand over the marina. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that I owned every inch of it. The docks, the slips, the lake bed, all mine. I was still reeling from Uncle Silas's funeral. The scent of lilies and pines still hung in the cabin air when I heard the crunch of tires outside. A pearl-white Escalade, pristine and smug, pulled to a halt like it owned the place. Out stepped a woman in a tennis outfit, 9:00 a.m. on a Tuesday, clutching a leather folder like it held the keys to the kingdom. "I'm Belinda Crankshaw, HOA president," she announced, strutting right up to my door like she belonged there. She shoved papers into my hands before I could speak. "This lake is community property. You need to sign over marina operations immediately." Her words were crisp, her tone rehearsed. The papers looked legit, stamped and highlighted. But her eyes, they gave her away. There was desperation behind them. Panic, even. I didn't know the whole story yet, but something told me she was sitting on a bomb. And I was holding the detonator. Just a few days earlier, I was no one special. Marcus Trenton, 45, divorced, electrician from Detroit. Living in a cramped studio apartment that smelled like ramen and regret. My ex got the house, I got the lawyer bills, and I thought the best years of my life had already passed. Then came Uncle Silas, the family hermit. He'd lived alone on a secluded lakefront property in Michigan for over 40 years, barely spoke to anyone, but he kept journal stacks of them. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, no eulogies, just silence and whispers. A week later, I was in a musty lawyer's office when the inheritance was revealed. 2 acres of lakefront land. 400 feet of shoreline. And most importantly, full underwater rights, including the 8-slip marina Silas built himself. I didn't even know what underwater rights were. But $200 a month per slip. That's $1,600 monthly income, out of nowhere. The cabin was rustic, sure, needed some work, but the place was beautiful. Tall pines, fresh air, crystal water. The docks were solid, professionally built. It was my clean slate, my second chance. Then, 3 days in, Belinda Crankshaw arrived. She came back the very next morning. This time, she brought reinforcements to jittery HOA board members trailing her like sheep. Same Escalade, same tennis outfit, but now her tone had teeth. "We need to discuss your situation," she said, handing me a thicker folder. Inside were more legal documents. This time, they claimed lake access was a grandfathered community easement. They demanded I sign over all marina operations to the HOA for $1. This is how Lakeshore Estates operates," she said, like I was a child who didn't understand adult business. "We protect property values. We maintain standards. We cannot allow inappropriate commercial operations." Her voice was dripping with fake civility and thinly veiled threats. What she really meant was, "You don't belong here." She adjusted her sunglasses like she was about to draw a weapon. "Sign in 48 hours or we'll bury you in court." "Ask the Hendersons how that worked out." She smiled. "Oh wait, you can't. They moved. After we made their lives hell." That night, I sat at Silas's old desk, leafing through his journals. They were dense, handwritten, but meticulous. What I found made my stomach turn. Page after page, he documented Belinda's tactics. Harassment, lawsuits, violation notices over nothing. One entry chilled me. "Belinda thinks she's smart, but she doesn't know about the 1999 easement agreement. $12,000 per year required for lake access. They haven't paid in years. If you're reading this, that's your nuclear option." The phrase echoed in my head. I flipped through more pages, heart pounding. Silas had written everything down. The marina sat on his underwater property by deed. Every dock, every post, every cleat. Legally his, now mine. That night, I stopped being Marcus, the electrician. I became Marcus, the landowner. The last line of defense against a corrupt regime. Belinda didn't wait. She sent the cavalry the next morning. 3 vehicles barreled up my driveway. Inspector, sheriff's deputy, and her, of course. "The Escalade, Mr. Trenton," the inspector said. "We've received multiple complaints. Illegal commercial activity, environmental violations, unpermitted structures." Belinda stood behind him, practically vibrating with anticipation. The deputy looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I kept calm. 20 years in construction teaches you how to spot a setup. It also teaches you how to document everything. "Ma'am, I need to conduct this inspection without interference, the inspector said to Belinda. Her smile cracked. Of course, she said, retreating to her SUV. The inspector's tone changed immediately. Your uncle was a good man, he whispered. She's been filing complaints since before you moved in. That tell you anything? 3 weeks. She started the war before I even set foot on the property. We walked the shoreline. I filmed everything, electrical systems, dock supports, paperwork. No violations. Nothing. The inspector nodded slowly. I've seen this before. Harassment, legal threats, then a cheap sale to a shell company. Same pattern. Twice. That night, I went deep into Silas's files, found the original 1952 deed. Clear language. All riparian rights to the lake's centerline, including the lake bottom. That meant every single dock was on my land. Silas had underlined it in red. Most people don't know lakefront usually includes the lake bottom unless it says otherwise. That's why it costs more. Then I found his collection of HOA letters. For 40 years, he kept everything. Threats, fines, and his replies confirm. Always referencing the deed. Always keeping copies. The next morning, I called the county. I'd like to file some complaints. I said, trespassing, unauthorized, commercial use, 15 years of unpaid rent for marina slips. $144,000 owed to me. Do you have documentation? The clerk asked. 40 years worth, I replied. The next knock on my door wasn't the HOA, it was allies. Tom and Betty Henderson, clutching a plate of cookies and a folder thick with papers. We heard about Belinda, Betty said, eyes darting. She did the same to us. But we kept records. Violation notices over mailbox colors. Grass length. Trash cans left out. 17 citations in 6 months. Over $30,000 in legal fees. And then suddenly mortgage issues. Courtesy of Belinda's husband, Dale. 3 other families, Betty whispered. Same story. All sold at 60 to 70% below market. All to the same company. I sat on my dock that night, staring at the stars above and the dark water below. This wasn't just about me. This was about justice. I opened my laptop and wrote a letter. Not just to Belinda but to every resident in Lakeshore Estates. The next morning, she'd receive a certified notice. Remove all boats within 30 days. Pay $50,000 in back rent. Cease all marina activity immediately. She'd tried to take what wasn't hers. Now it was my turn. Game on, Belinda. Belinda didn't take my declaration lying down. Within 48 hours of receiving my certified letters, she mobilized her troops. Emergency HOA meeting. Flyers slapped on every mailbox in Lakeshore Estates, red lettering, shouting urgent community, health hazard. According to Belinda, my marina posed an immediate environmental and safety risk to the entire neighborhood. It was war now, and she wanted to turn the entire community against me. But I wasn't scared. I had the law, the land, and a basement full of ammunition in the form of Uncle Silas's meticulous documentation. The more she pushed, the more I dug, and the more I dug, the uglier her empire looked. Turns out, Belinda had been using the HOA as her personal money machine. While she screamed about community standards, she and her husband had been quietly buying up lakefront properties through a web of shell companies. Every time someone fought back, they were drowned in violation, notices and legal fees until they sold for pennies. That shell company registered to a P.O. box in a different state. Her husband, Dale Crankshaw, was the listed contact. But now, the pattern was public. Word had spread. Residents started talking, whispering, comparing notes, sharing letters, and then, something incredible happened. The Patels came by one evening, brought samosas and something more powerful evidence. They'd been harassed just like the others. Their daughter couldn't even ride her bike without getting scolded by Belinda for being too loud. After 18 months, they cracked. Sold their home at a loss, but they too had kept everything. Don't let her win, Mr. Patel, said eyes fierce. She thinks she owns this lake. Remind her who really does. I didn't just have paper now, I had people. The following week, I filed a formal lawsuit, not just for the back rent, but for harassment, property damage, and unauthorized commercial use of private land. Dave Morrison, the county inspector, submitted a signed affidavit supporting my claim. He even included his full inspection notes and photos proving there were no violations on my property. Then came the media. A small local paper picked up the story. HOA power grab, backfires, on new lake owner. It didn't take long before local TV was knocking on my door. I wasn't trying to be a hero, but I knew this fight wasn't just mine anymore. Residents who had stayed silent started speaking up. The Kowalskis who'd left years ago emailed me. They still had photos, documents, and even voicemail threats from Belinda. I added every bit of it to my case. Belinda panicked. Suddenly, HOA board members started resigning, quietly, without explanation. One of them, Nancy, I think, left me an anonymous envelope. Inside was a meeting transcript. A recording. Belinda had openly discussed pushing me out before I even moved in. He won't last, she said. Just make it unbearable. It always works. But not this time. A week before our court hearing, Belinda made one last move. A formal cease and desist letter, accusing me of defamation and demanding I take down all slanderous material. She said she'd sue me for libel if I didn't comply. I smiled as I filed it with the court. Another attempt to silence the truth. When the day finally came, I walked into that courtroom not as a man under attack, but as someone carrying the voices of a dozen bullied families. I had deeds, contracts, logs, receipts, recordings, affidavits, photographs, and testimony. She had paperwork riddled with forged easement claims and a crumbling reputation. The judge didn't even need a recess. He ruled swiftly. The marina, docks, and lake bottom were legally mine. The HOA had no jurisdiction, no easement, and no standing to collect any fees from marina users. The court ordered the HOA to pay me $144,000 in back rent and damages. Belinda was personally fined for abuse of power and fraudulent claims. But the most satisfying part. The court also ordered a full forensic audit of the HOA's finances. That's when everything unraveled. Turns out, Belinda and Dale had siphoned tens of thousands from HOA dues for consulting services, shell purchases, and luxury expenses, none of which had been approved by the board. The community turned on her overnight. She resigned in disgrace the next morning. Her Escalade was gone by sundown. Dale disappeared right after. No one's seen them since. The board was dissolved. A new one was elected, with real transparency. One of the first motions they passed. A formal letter of apology to every homeowner Belinda had driven out. A few months later, I stood on my dock watching the lake glisten in the late summer sun. The marina was quiet, peaceful, full again, not just with boats, but with people who felt like they could breathe for the first time in years. The Hendersons, they bought back their home. The Patels invited the whole neighborhood for a cookout. Kids laughed, dogs barked, and nobody measured grass with a ruler. Me, I finally felt like I belonged somewhere. And Uncle Silas, his journals, didn't just help me win, they gave a whole community their home back. Sometimes, it only takes one person to stand up to the bully at the top. Turns out, I was that person. And I'd do it again, in a heartbeat. You'd think after all, that the court win, the media coverage, the HOA's collapse, that peace would settle in like fog on the lake. But you'd be wrong. What came next wasn't just healing, it was reckoning. The audit revealed more than we ever expected. Over $300,000 misappropriated across 7 years. HOA dues funneled into phantom companies, renovations that never happened, and even a fake landscaping service that turned out to be Belinda's cousin in Ohio. The sheriff's department opened a criminal investigation. Subpoenas went out. And suddenly, neighbors who had once tiptoed around Belinda were handing over evidence like floodgates had burst. One of those neighbors was Marvin Ellis. Marvin was in his 80s. Lived alone on the North Point, and rarely left his porch. Folks thought he was senile, always mumbling, always feeding birds. But Marvin had been watching for decades. He showed up one afternoon with a shoebox full of spiral notebooks. "Didn't think anyone care," he said, setting the box on my porch. "But Silas would have wanted you to have these." Inside were records going back to 1989. Names, dates, payments, violations, every time. Belinda or her predecessors strong-armed a homeowner into submission. Marvin had even drawn crude maps of which properties had been sold under pressure. The same shell company names appeared over and over again. It wasn't just an HOA gone rogue. It was organized exploitation disguised as community leadership. I took it all to the county prosecutor. Within weeks, formal charges were filed. Wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to defraud homeowners. Dale and Belinda Crankshaw were now fugitives. Last known location: a cash sale condo in Clearwater, Florida. The authorities would catch up eventually. But it wasn't just about them anymore. The victory sparked something bigger in Lakeshore Estates. With the HOA board dissolved, we formed a new community council. No dues, no fines, no threats, just volunteers. Honest people, retired teachers, veterans, parents. We created a rotating maintenance crew, funded by voluntary contributions. We helped each other instead of policing each other. Even the lake changed. For the first time in years, people fished without fear. Families hosted barbecues on their docks. Teenagers swam past dusk without someone yelling about curfews. Life returned, like the lake had been holding its breath for too long, and then something unexpected happened. I found another key, literally, hidden in an old lantern in Uncle Silas's basement, under a loose floorboard. It was taped to a note, handwritten and fading. If they ever push too hard, this opens everything. It took days, but I finally found the matching lock and old steamer trunk buried beneath the floor of the workshop. Inside, gold, not real gold, but something even more valuable. Tapes, letters, photos, receipts, a full binder labeled Lakeshore. Corruption timeline. Silas hadn't just been watching, he'd been building a case for years. He'd suspected the HOA was a front. He just didn't have the strength to finish the fight, but he knew someone would. I scanned every page. I archived it online. Made sure it couldn't disappear. We turned it over to an investigative journalist. The story hit the national press. One man's inheritance exposes HOA empire of fraud. It went viral. HOA reform groups started contacting me. I was invited to speak at local councils, to share how we took down the beast without a single brick thrown. But fame never interested me. What mattered was that justice had been served. That families who'd lost everything finally had their names cleared. That kids who once saw their parents cry in courtrooms now saw them smiling on porches. I rebuilt the cabin, reinforced the docks, restored the workshop, left Silas's journals right where he kept them on the shelf above the fireplace, wrapped in oilcloth, safe. The marina. It's thriving, but not as a business. We opened it to the neighborhood for free. First come, first serve. No dues, no leases. Just a clipboard in my kitchen where you write your name and your slip number. That's what community looks like. And every once in a while, when the water's calm and the sun starts to dip behind the pines, I sit on the end of dock slip number 1. I light one of Silas's old cigars, sip cheap coffee from his favorite tin mug, and listen to the laughter, to the quiet peace that only comes when justice has done its job, to the soft slap of waves against the shore I now protect, not just for me, but for everyone who was ever told they didn't belong. This story started with an inheritance, but what I really inherited was a fight worth winning, and a home worth defending. Every damn day. Tom's voice crackled through the receiver like static before a storm. She's lost her damn mind, he whispered. Belinda's claiming your dockwork is leaching chemicals into the lake. Says you're turning the place into a commercial fishing hub that'll draw in undesirable elements. The words made my skin crawl, not because of what she said, but because I knew exactly what she meant. Belinda's code wasn't subtle. It never had been, but Tom wasn't done. She's lawyered up. Some Grand Rapids hotshot charging $400 an hour. They're filing an injunction to halt your construction under environmental protection laws. $400 an hour. The HOA was lighting their members' dues on fire, funding a campaign to steal what was mine, but Belinda's true masterpiece arrived the next morning. I was on the dock, replacing rotted planks, when I heard the car doors slam. 3 of my slip renters, the Johnsons, the Kowalskis, and Frank, a retired vet with sad eyes and a proud handshake, walked up the driveway, guilt hanging off their shoulders like fog. Frank's voice cracked as he spoke. Marcus, we got letters from the HOA. If we don't terminate our leases by Friday, they're hitting us with $500 daily fines. Says we're supporting an illegal commercial operation. The scent of fresh wood stain mingled with fear. These were good people, and Belinda had weaponized their decency against them. She can't legally do that, I said. Frank shook his head. Maybe not, but she can make our lives hell trying. Johnson's already got a violation for a garden gnome. My mailbox 15 years, it's been fine now, it's 2 inches too short. I saw it now. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was the same way she'd driven out the Hendersons, only this time, I wasn't walking away. That afternoon, I called Patricia Wong, the maritime attorney Tom had mentioned. Her voice was calm, efficient, deadly sharp. Mr. Trenton, I've reviewed your documents. Your riparian rights are ironclad, she said. Then her tone shifted. But there's something else. I felt the ground shift. What is it? I've seen this playbook before. Belinda Crankshaw has acquired 4 lakefront properties in the last 8 years using identical tactics. She harasses, buries them in legal fees, then offers lowball settlements. It was all falling into place. And here's the kicker, Patricia continued. Her husband, Dale, his bank Lakeshore Bank holds the mortgages on 23 of the 47 HOA properties. That's a massive conflict of interest. I didn't need a law degree to understand what that meant. The fix had been in since the beginning. Then she said something that froze my blood. Your uncle's marina records show consistent $200 monthly payments from members over 15 years. But the HOA's records, they show $250. $50 skimmed off every lease, every month, for 15 years. $36,000 stolen from their own neighbors. This wasn't just a hostile takeover. It was institutional fraud. That night, I stopped playing defense. I spent 3 hours crafting a letter. Every detail, the financial fraud, the conflict of interest, the harassment campaign. And the final blow, effective immediately, all marina operations are suspended until the HOA settles its $144,000 debt for unauthorized use of my lake bottom. All boats must be removed within 30 days or they'll be considered abandoned property. I sent it certified mail to all 47 households. By Thursday morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. Not with outrage, with panic. Half the neighborhood kept their boats at my dock. Without it, they had nowhere to go. But the best call came from Patricia. Marcus, I found the 1999 county agreement your uncle mentioned. The document was a bombshell. The HOA's lake access easement required $12,000 annual payments to my family. And how many had they made? None, she said. They owe you $312,000 in back payments. Without that easement, 31 homes would lose lake access. Their property values would nosedive overnight. I wasn't the one in trouble anymore. Belinda was. She reacted like a cornered animal. Calls to city council, county commissioners. Crying wolf to anyone who'd listen. Her story. I was an environmental terrorist. Tuesday morning, the first attack came. A city truck pulled up, marked Environmental Protection Services. A guy with a clipboard marched over. Mr. Trenton. Jim Bailey. Septic inspection. Got reports of untreated waste entering the lake. Bull. My system was up to code. I let him inspect it anyway. When Belinda's SUV disappeared around the corner, he leaned in. System's fine, he muttered. But I've had 3 calls. This week, same woman, same complaint. Wednesday was worse. Jerry Kowalski ran over, pale and shaking. Emergency board meeting last night. Belinda hired a private investigator. Guy from Detroit. She's digging into your life, divorce, finances, everything. I barely had time to process it before the media came calling. Mr. Trenton, this is Amanda Bennett from Channel 8 News. We've received an anonymous tip about environmental violations on your property. Would you like to comment? I smiled. Amanda, I'd love to comment, but not about fake violations, about HOA corruption, fraud, harassment. I've got 40 years of documentation. She scheduled the interview on the spot. Then came Thursday, Belinda's nuclear option. I was tightening a dock rail when 3 vehicles roared up the driveway like a raid. County inspector. Sheriff. A man in a hazmat suit. Sir, we need you to cease all construction. Possible groundwater contamination. Behind them, Belinda watched from her Escalade, smug as a general at war. But I was ready. I pulled out my phone, started filming. Names, badges, everything. Then I called Patricia Wang. Officers, she said through the speaker, what contaminants are you testing for? What's your baseline data? Who filed the complaint? Silence. The whole thing, a sham. Belinda had claimed I was dumping toxic chemicals. Problem was, I had receipts for eco-friendly treatments and sealants. But the real breakthrough came. That evening, Tom Henderson knocked on my door holding a manila folder like it was radioactive. Betty and I did some digging, he said. We talked to the other families, Belinda forced out. He laid out photo after photo. Property deeds, corporate records, all pointing to one shell company, Lakeshore Development LLC, and the managing member. I didn't need to guess. Belinda Crenshaw with her husband Dale approving the loans. This wasn't an HOA feud. This was organized crime. That night, I sat on the dock, staring out at the moonlit water. The war I never wanted had found me, but I wasn't fighting for just my land anymore. I was fighting for every neighbor she'd defrauded, every family she'd forced out, every voice she'd silenced. Tomorrow, Channel 8 would get everything, but tonight, I'd enjoy the stillness, the calm before the storm. I barely slept that night. The stillness of the lake, once peaceful, now felt electric, like the moment before thunder cracks the sky. But by sunrise, everything was in motion. Channel 8's van pulled up just after 7 a.m. Camera crew, setting up before the dew had even lifted off the grass. Amanda Bennett, the reporter, wasn't what I expected. She was sharp, no nonsense, and as soon as I laid out the evidence, fraudulent dues collection, forged HOA ballots, the forged lake access agreement, she knew this wasn't just a local interest story. It was a powder keg. By noon, the piece was already airing online with the headline, HOA President Accused of Massive Land Fraud and Racketeering Scheme at Hidden Pines Lake. The reaction was immediate. Cars lined the road outside my property. Residents, former HOA board members, people I hadn't spoken to in years. They all came carrying stories, receipts, threats they'd endured in silence. Some were angry, some embarrassed, but all of them wanted the same thing, justice. Frank showed up too. This time, not trembling. She tried to fine me for putting up a Support Marcus sign. He laughed, shaking his head. So I put up 3 more. Even the Johnsons who'd canceled their slip lease out of fear walked back into my driveway with an apology and a check in hand. You were right, they said. We just didn't know how deep it went. And then, the call that changed everything. Mr. Trenton. The voice on the other end was stern. This is Agent Ramirez, FBI Public Corruption Task Force. We'd like to speak with you about Ms. Crankshaw and your HOA. I thought I'd misheard. The FBI. Yes, sir, we've had complaints before, but not enough to launch anything formal. Your documentation may be the tipping point. And that's when I realized, Belinda had built her little empire on secrets, on threats and loopholes, on neighbors too scared or too tired to fight back. But she'd made one critical mistake. She picked the wrong man this time. Within 48 hours, the neighborhood was in open revolt. HOA meetings turned into shouting matches. The Kowalskis filed a motion to suspend Belinda as president pending investigation. 5 households filed police reports for financial misconduct. Someone even started a petition to dissolve the HOA entirely. Belinda, once the self-proclaimed queen of Hidden Pines, was now a pariah. But she wasn't done. Late Sunday night, just after midnight, I heard footsteps crunching across the gravel path behind my house. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside only to find a bright orange notice nailed to my dock's support beam, cease and desist. All marina operations must terminate immediately or face criminal prosecution. No agency name. No official seal. Just a crude signature, B. Crankshaw. That was the last straw. The next morning, I walked straight into the county records office and filed a formal civil suit for back payments on lake access rights, $312,000, plus damages for loss of income and harassment. And I didn't stop there. Using the photos, deeds, and transaction records that Tom and I had gathered, Patricia helped me submit a federal complaint under the Racketeer, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, ACTRICO, because this wasn't just a feud anymore. It was a criminal enterprise. The fallout came fast. 3 weeks later, county auditors raided the HOA's financial office. Boxes of documents were seized. Belinda's face was plastered across the evening news. Not smiling behind a podium but ducking behind a manila folder on courthouse steps. Neighbors who'd once ignored her now turned their backs. Dale's Bank began hemorrhaging clients. Realtors stopped listing Hidden Pines homes as lake access included. But the real moment of victory came one golden September morning, when I stepped out onto my dock with a cup of coffee and saw the sheriff's cruiser parked across the street. He didn't come to question me. He came to arrest her. Belinda Crankshaw, charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit racketeering. She didn't speak when they cuffed her. Just looked across the lake, maybe realizing for the first time that the water she thought she owned had finally swallowed her empire whole. It took months for the lawsuits to settle. Dale tried to sell the properties tied to his wife's scheme, but the courts froze their assets. A forensic accountant uncovered nearly $500,000 in misappropriated HOA funds used to remodel their house, lease a boat, even fund vacations to the Bahamas. Meanwhile, I rebuilt the marina. Not just for me, but for the community. No more private leases. No more fear. I offered dock space to every neighbor who had stood up for free for as long as they needed. We held a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate Belinda's sentencing. Frank brought ribs. The Johnsons brought a cake shaped like a jail cell. Tom stood beside me, beer in hand, shaking his head in disbelief. "You did it," he said. "No," I corrected him. "We did." The HOA was dissolved the following spring. The lake, at last, was ours again. And every time I walk out on that dock, the board's steady beneath my feet. I think about what it took. The lies. The fight. The friends made and the silence broken. Because sometimes, the only way to take back what's yours is to burn the empire down and build something better from the ashes. Spring rolled in with a strange kind of silence. No more fines. No more threatening letters taped to mailboxes. No clipboard patrols pacing the sidewalk. Just birdsong, the creak of boats on the lake, and the distant hammering of a neighbor fixing up his porch with his own hands. Not the HOA's approval. But while the neighborhood was healing, the scars ran deep. One afternoon, I got a letter, a real one, handwritten, on thick stationery, no HOA logo. It was from Patricia, my attorney. Inside was a copy of the final judgment from the civil case, Belinda and Dale Crankshaw, liable for $428,000 in damages and restitution. The words didn't feel real. For months I'd fought them tooth and nail, watched my life, my land, my community, be torn apart, and now here it was. Justice, not in a headline but on paper. But justice didn't undo the damage. Tom had lost half his contracts during the conflict, labeled a troublemaker by HOA allies. Frank's wife had left him after the stress got too heavy. The Johnsons' kid had been bullied at school by kids parroting their parents' paranoia. The lake may have calmed, but underneath, the ripples of Belinda's reign still echoed. And then, in late April, something happened that none of us expected. A letter arrived from Belinda herself. It was brief, cold, no apology, no ownership, just a single paragraph blaming political witch hunts and media hysteria for her downfall. She ended it with a line I'll never forget. "You may have taken the HOA, but you'll never control this neighborhood the way I did." I laughed when I first read it, but then I got angry. Because she still didn't understand. I never wanted control. I wanted freedom from her rules, her extortion, her fear. I wanted this place to feel like home, not a battlefield. And so, I did something unexpected. I invited every neighbor to the lake for one final town meeting, not under an HOA banner, not with secret ballots or manipulated votes. Just us, under the open sky, with folding chairs and lemonade and a whiteboard. I stood at the front and said, "We have a choice. We can spend the next 10 years blaming Belinda and licking our wounds, or we build something new. Not an HOA, not even a formal council, just a pact." We called it the Hidden Pines Collective. Voluntary, transparent. No dues, no fines, no gatekeeping. If someone needed a ramp rebuilt, we helped. If a boat needed moving, we coordinated it. If someone slipped into old HOA habits like scolding a neighbor about their paint color, we called it out with a smile and a reminder. That's not who we are anymore. Tom donated materials for a community dock. Frank built picnic benches along the lake. The Johnsons helped set up a lending library in the old HOA shack, now repurposed as a free community shed. We filled it with tools, lawn gear, extra cans of paint, and a chalkboard that read, "Take what you need, leave what you can. No permission required." Every so often, someone from outside would drive through and ask, "Who's in charge around here?" And we'd just smile and say, "No one." And that's the point. The lake, once a battleground for power and profit, became a place of laughter again. Kids fishing off the dock, parents hosting potlucks, even the realtor signs that once read HOA managed lakefront were replaced with something new, independent community. Resident-owned lake access. One morning, while I was refueling a pontoon boat for a neighbor, I noticed something sticking out from the reeds along the shore, a cracked wooden sign, half sunk in the mud. I waded out and pulled it up. It read, "Private property. HOA access. Only trespassers will be prosecuted." I held it for a long time, letting the memories wash over me of threats, lawsuits, handcuffs, silence broken by screams. Then, I snapped the plank in two and tossed it on the firewood pile. That night, we had a bonfire by the water. Not to celebrate revenge, not to gloat, but to mark the end of something. And the beginning of everything we'd fought for, because, sometimes, you win not by punishing the enemy, but by building a life so strong, they no longer matter. The Crankshaws were gone, their empire in ruins. But the community they tried to destroy. We were just getting started. They thought they could bleed me dry with silence. Permanent lake access, a privilege most communities would kill for, had come with a steep condition. $12,000 per year. Every year, paid directly to the landowner. 26 years of payments. And according to the contract, just one missed year voided the entire agreement. But the HOA hadn't missed one. They'd missed 8. I stared at the payment schedule, each unchecked box mocking me. Since 2017, not a single cent had been paid. That was $96,000 in back dues, plus compound interest at 8%, the total, $147,000. And right there, clipped to the back page, was Uncle Silas's unmistakable handwriting. They stopped paying when they thought I was too old and sick to fight. Joke's on them. I kept everything. And the clock's run out. The easement, the legal lifeline to the Lake 431 of the 47 homes in Lakeshore Estates, expired after just 12 months of non-payment, and they were 8 years deep. I did the math. Losing access would wipe 40% off those homes' values overnight. That was over $2.3 million in collective equity, gone. Now I knew why Belinda was desperate. I sank into Uncle Silas's creaky old chair, the weight of it all dropping onto my chest like a lead anchor. This wasn't about one dock. It was about everything. The entire foundation of the neighborhood. If that easement vanished, Belinda HOA had no right to the lake, no boating, no swimming, no fishing, nothing but empty views. Then I saw the final note, written in slanted script. Check the county recorder's office. She knows about this. She's known for years. That's why she's trying to force me out. If she gets this land, she gets the lake. Forever. My phone buzzed. Patricia Wang found something on your HOA president. You free this afternoon? I called her back before the text fully registered. I found the easement, I said. HOA owes me $147,000. There was a long pause. Jesus Christ, Marcus. That explains everything. What do you mean? I dug through property records. Belinda didn't just buy lakefront homes through shell companies. She targeted ones with easement clauses. She's been eliminating any property that could challenge her control. That's when it all snapped into focus. She wasn't just corrupt, she was a real estate predator, a calculated fraud, slowly choking off access one parcel at a time. And it had worked. Until now. And there's more, Patricia said. I found county planning docs from 1999. The subdivision, all 47 homes, only got approved because of that easement. Without it, they couldn't legally build this many houses on a landlocked plot. I almost laughed. Revoking the easement didn't just mean lost access. It meant the entire neighborhood was built on a lie. No wonder they were willing to play dirty. No wonder Dale and his bank wanted me gone. If this went public, mortgages would collapse, property values would nosedive, and dozens of families would be underwater, literally and financially, out on the water, boats bobbed on stolen time. Most of those homeowners had no idea that Belinda had been lying to them for years. Uncle Silas hadn't just left me land, he'd left me a tactical nuke. And Belinda, she'd just given me a reason to press the button. By the time Patricia arrived, the kitchen had transformed into a war room. The Channel 8 story we leaked was already trending. Legal documents were spread across the table. My laptop screen flashed with the headline, HOA, President accused of multi-million-dollar fraud, but no one was celebrating. Cornered animals fight the hardest. And Belinda Crankshaw had just been cornered. Neighbors trickled in, some I knew, some I didn't, all angry, all ready. Patricia laid out the map like a general planning an invasion. She has 3 options, she said. And we need to block all of them. Option 1. Discredit the easement. Hire legal experts to nitpick the county's authority from 1999. It wouldn't work, but it would buy her time to keep grifting, keep stealing. Option 2. Eminent domain. Convince the county to seize my land for the community's benefit. A long shot, but with bank pressure and political favors. Not impossible. And option 3 chilled me. Destroy my reputation. Fabricated police reports. Planted evidence. A smear campaign to paint me as a violent, unstable threat. She already tried that with us, Tom said. Suddenly, we had 6 property violations in 2 weeks. Patricia wasn't done. There's a federal law, RESPA, that makes it a felony to use harassment to manipulate property values. If we prove systematic abuse, this doesn't end in civil court. It ends in prison. The room fell quiet. How do we prove it? I asked. Jerry raised his hand. I've been documenting everything since 2021. Violation notices, meeting minutes, photos. Betty pulled a folder from her purse. We contacted every family she forced out. They kept records too. We had the makings of a full-blown counteroffensive. Phase 1. Publicly demand the $147,000 in back payments. Certified mail to every HOA member. No more secrets. Phase 2. Organize. 15 families were already on board for a petition to oust Belinda and demand a full audit. Phase 3. Go. National. We had the media's attention. Patricia had contacts at 60 Minutes and the Detroit Free Press. Belinda's scheme wasn't just local anymore. Then came the real coup. Rebecca Marsh, a quiet elementary school teacher, spoke from the corner. What if we turned her own tactics against her? Pack the HOA meeting with supporters. Force her to answer, publicly. It was perfect. She thrived in shadows. We'd drag her into the light. Next Saturday, the annual HOA vote. All 47 homes represented. All 47 with a voice. By then, the letters would be sent. The stories would be out. And the neighborhood would know the truth. We were done playing defense. But Belinda, she wasn't done at all. That night, heavy machinery rolled in under cover of darkness. A dump truck scattered concrete debris and rusted rebar across the shoreline, just close enough to look like my property. Just far enough to avoid charges. By morning, my dock was tagged in dripping red spray paint, community property. Then came the sheriff. 3 false reports filed in one day. Allegations of terroristic threats against board members. I showed receipts. Streaming history. Patricia's time-stamped texts. Deputy Martinez just sighed. I have to file the report, Mr. Trenton. Maybe get some cameras. For your own safety. It wasn't intimidation anymore. It was open war. By Tuesday, Patricia called with a bombshell. Belinda had tried to bribe the county inspector, $2,000, cash, to fabricate environmental violations. He'd reported her. She was also targeting septic, electrical, even the fire marshal. Trying to buy violations. And then came Wednesday's gut punch. Tom Henderson's voice cracked over the phone. They stole our mail, Marcus, our social security checks, medical forms. We found them in a ditch, near Belinda's house. Mail theft, a federal offense. But she didn't care. She was unraveling. Thursday morning, I got the call I'd been dreading. The Department of Natural Resources. Wildlife violations. Urgent inspection. Another false report. Sandra Willis arrived that afternoon, clipboard in hand, expression tight with annoyance. After 2 hours of testing, photographing, and investigating, she turned to me with a look of tired sympathy. Mr. Trenton. Your property's clean. Someone's wasting our time. I nodded. I already knew who. Belinda was burning everything down and hoping we'd burn with it. But it was too late. The fuse was lit, and the neighborhood was watching. Friday morning broke with a low fog rolling in off the lake, a stillness that felt like the world holding its breath. The HOA vote was 24 hours away. And despite everything Belinda had thrown at us, the lies, the sabotage, the intimidation, we were still standing. But I knew we needed more than just standing. We needed to hit back, and hit hard. By noon, our petition had 33 signatures, enough to trigger a special election. Enough to call for a forensic audit of every HOA transaction over the last decade. Patricia filed it with the county clerk and CCD, every local news outlet. Within hours it was on the evening news. Lakeshore HOA president under fire. Petition demands audit, resignation. Belinda didn't make a statement. But we didn't need her to. Her silence was as loud as a siren. And then the storm rolled in. Not weather, but something more electric. Saturday, the day of the vote, the community center parking lot overflowed. People walked from blocks away. Some brought kids, others brought folders full of documents, timelines, and unanswered complaints. The air buzzed with tension. Belinda arrived, flanked by 2 HOA board members, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. She wore her usual power suit and sunglasses, but there was a crack in the armor. A twitch at the corner of her mouth. She knew what was coming. The meeting began like any other. Minutes read. Motions passed. But when it came time for the floor to open, Patricia stood up. "I move to amend the agenda," she said. "We need to address the $147,000 in unpaid easement dues and the easement's expiration, which impacts the legal standing of this HOA's lake access." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Belinda stood. "That matter is private, not," but Patricia cut her off. 33 homeowners disagree. She turned and handed the petition to the secretary. Murmurs turned to whispers, whispers to raised voices. "Is this true? She owes how much? Wait, we could lose lake access." Belinda tried to restore order, but the floodgates had opened. And then Rebecca, the quiet teacher, stepped forward. "I'd like to speak." The room fell still. She held up a folder, dozens of pictures, letters, and notices. "This is everything my family has endured under Belinda's leadership. False violations, harassment, threats, and now we know why, because she needed us gone. Because she's been hiding the truth," Belinda snapped. "This is a circus." Tom rose next. "Then why does your signature show up on property sales linked to shell companies? Why are you the registered agent for 3 LLCs that own lakefront homes?" People gasped. Phones were out, screens were being recorded, and Patricia delivered the final blow. "We contacted a former board member who resigned in 2022. He signed a sworn affidavit. Belinda instructed the board to ignore the easement payments. Said it wasn't worth paying an old man. That they could outlive the paperwork." Silence. Then a voice from the back. "I motioned to remove Belinda Crankshaw as HOA president effective immediately." Another voice, seconded. They held the vote right then and there. 45 votes in favor, 1 against, 1 abstained. Belinda didn't speak. She didn't move. Just stood there, frozen, as her empire crumbled in a single sentence. "You're removed from office," the secretary said. "Effective immediately." And just like that, it was over. The dock was reclaimed. The letters stopped. The harassment ended, but the story didn't. Not really. Within a month, the audit began. It uncovered over $600,000 in misappropriated funds, including mysterious consulting fees, landscaping bills for homes Belinda secretly owned, and over $40,000 in personal travel expenses. She was arrested before the year was out. Mail fraud, wire fraud, harassment, multiple federal and state charges. Uncle Silas's land, the land they tried to steal, became the centerpiece of a new conservation effort. Half shoreline, half community garden, open to everyone. No gate codes. No hidden fees. Just peace. And the lake, it healed too. For the first time in years, kids swam without fear of being yelled at. Families picnicked without checking for fines. Neighbors waved, again, because Belinda's reign wasn't just about control, it was about fear. And when fear was gone, we remembered who we were. We were a community, and we were done being silent. The seasons changed, and with it, the scars of Belinda's rule began to fade. But for many of us, the damage ran deeper than fines and threats. It was trust that had been broken. Still, in the ashes of her collapse, something beautiful began to rise. The new board didn't waste time. Patricia was elected president, unanimously. The first act, dismantling every shady contract Belinda had buried into the bylaws. The second, hosting a town hall, no closed doors, no secret minutes, no bureaucratic walls between neighbors. I'll never forget that evening. It was crisp, late autumn. Strings of warm lights zigzagged across the old community center lawn. Someone brought cider. Someone else brought a guitar. For the first time in years, people weren't whispering or glancing over their shoulders. They were laughing. Kids were playing tag between folding chairs. And Uncle Silas sat right in the middle of it all. He smiled more in that one night than I'd seen him smile in a decade. The old man who once silently repaired his dock under the weight of threats was now the honorary chair of the Lakeshore Environmental Committee. And he wore the title with pride. But healing wasn't just about Belinda. It was about what we let happen. The blind eyes, the shrugged shoulders, the silence that enabled her to grow her empire unchecked. We had to face that, too. So we didn't just clean house. We changed the system. We introduced term limits, independent financial oversight, a community vote on all major spending, and perhaps the most radical act of all, we tore down the fence. That 6-foot-tall wooden symbol of division that Belinda had ordered built around the lake park. Gone. In its place, a garden. Open, wild, beautiful. A space that welcomed everyone. One afternoon in early spring, I sat there on the bench Uncle Silas built, watching two kids fish off the end of the dock. Their parents were nearby, talking, with Patricia and a few other board members, just being neighbors. No screaming, no citations, just peace. Then Tom sat beside me. "You ever think it'd end like this?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not in a million years." He handed me a folded paper. "You should see this." It was a letter. Official, from the county district attorney's office. They were building a civil case not just against Belinda, but against every contractor, developer, and shell company tied to her scheme. There would be restitution, property reassessment, possibly even jail time for her accomplices. "Justice doesn't always come fast," Tom said, "but it's coming." A week later, Belinda's trial began. The media swarmed our tiny town like vultures, but this time, we had nothing to hide. We told the truth. Every lie she told, every family she hurt, every dollar she took, it was all laid bare in court. She tried to blame others, claimed ignorance, even said she was protecting the community from degeneration. But the jury didn't buy it. Guilty. On all counts. When they took her away in cuffs, I felt no joy. Just a strange, quiet satisfaction. Not because we destroyed her, but because we refused to be destroyed by her. In the end, she wasn't the monster under the bed. She was just a woman drunk on power, who thought no one would ever challenge her. She forgot the one rule every bully eventually learns the hard way: when enough people stand together, the tyrant falls. Months passed. The town changed. We still have disagreements, sure. But now they happen in the open, around tables, with coffee instead of threats. People care again. They show up, they vote, and me. I started writing it all down. Every detail, not just for me, but for the future, for anyone who finds themselves staring down someone like Belinda and wonders if they stand a chance. Because the answer is yes. Always yes. You just have to be brave enough to stand up. And loud enough, that others can hear you, and when they do, everything changes. Ask. The ecologist's voice was steady, but her words cut through the noise like a knife. Frankly, these so-called violations are nonsense. Your improvements are improving lake ecology, not harming it. Whoever filed this complaint either knows nothing about environmental science or is deliberately wasting state time. Then she paused, glanced around, and lowered her voice. Off the record. For complaints, same address, 2 weeks, same person. Each one more frantic than the last. Someone's got a serious vendetta. By the time Sandra had packed up her gear, Jerry Kowalski came jogging up the road, out of breath but buzzing with urgency. "Emergency HOA board meeting last night," he said between breaths. "Belinda wants to hire private security. She's calling it community protection, but she means around-the-clock surveillance. On you." The paranoia had reached fever pitch. But Jerry wasn't done. 3 more board members resigned. They're afraid they'll be dragged into a harassment lawsuit. It's just Belinda, her husband Dale, and one other guy left, and he's up to his neck in debt to Dale's bank. They're crumbling, Marcus. I didn't waste a second. By Friday morning, my entire property was under professional surveillance, 8 high-definition cameras, infrared motion sensors, cloud backup streaming live footage straight to Patricia's law office. But the real turning point came hours later. Rebecca Marsh appeared at my front door, clutching a manila folder and grinning like she'd found a golden ticket. "Marcus, you won't believe this," she whispered, glancing behind her. "I teach Emma Dale and Belinda's daughter. Yesterday she asked me why her dad keeps talking about the lake man and what'll happen if people find out about the money. Then she said her parents are arguing a lot about debt, about moving. Kids hear everything. They remember everything. And Emma, bless her, had just dropped a bomb. Her mom had been making secret phone calls, talking about selling the house, getting out before it all comes down. The rats were getting ready to flee the sinking ship." That night, I sat on the dock. The lake was calm. My cameras blinked quietly overhead, and I realized Belinda had made a fatal mistake. Every forged document, every false complaint, every underhanded move was now evidence. Her downfall was being recorded in 1080p. Her final week of freedom wasn't just desperation, it was madness. Monday morning, a truck pulled into my driveway. Lakeshore Property Management Services was painted on the side. 2 men got out, started pacing and snapping photos like they owned the place. "Excuse me," I said, walking toward them. "What do you think you're doing?" "Court order." The bigger one grunted. HOAS, assessing assets for potential receivership. Yeah, sure. Court order, my ass. There hadn't been any filing, but they didn't know I'd been documenting everything since the first threat. By Tuesday, Belinda went full criminal. Patricia called, furious. Marcus, she forged your signature. Filed a fake 99-year marina lease. Claims you signed over all lake access rights to the HOA for $1 a year. I almost laughed. Please tell me the clerk didn't fall for it. They did. Until I brought in a handwriting expert. She didn't even get your capital letters right. It's laughable. But also it's federal document fraud. That's 5 years minimum. On Wednesday, she tried bribing a judge. Judge Morrison's campaign suddenly got a $5,000 donation. Same day, Belinda filed a motion challenging the easement agreement. Sounded suspicious. Because it was. The check. Signed by Dale. From the HOAS community account. Not just bribery. That was a campaign finance violation, misuse of community funds, and criminal conspiracy. She was stacking felonies like trading cards. Thursday, she went full theatrical. Patricia called again, nearly crying from laughing. You're not going to believe this, she said. Belinda organized a fake environmental protest. Outside the county building. Hired people from a temp agency to chant about you poisoning the lake. You're joking. I wish. Channel 8 showed up. Interviewed the protesters. Half of them admitted on camera they were paid $50 and didn't even know what they were protesting. One guy couldn't even pronounce environmental. By now, her desperation had become a circus. But Friday morning chilled me. Rebecca called at sunrise. No humor this time. Marcus. Emma didn't come to school yesterday. I called the house. Belinda said they're visiting grandparents, but her mom lives 2 blocks away. She hasn't seen them. Within an hour, Tom Henderson confirmed it. He'd seen suitcases. Big ones. Being stuffed into Dale's car at 5 a.m. They were running. They knew it was over. That same afternoon, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Trenton, this is Special Agent Lisa Bennett, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Her voice was calm, steady, like someone used to dealing with liars and thieves. We've been watching your neighborhood for weeks. Your attorney sent us detailed documentation of real estate fraud, forged filings, and asset misuse. We're ready to move. How ready? I asked. Arrests, search warrants, asset seizures. Mrs. Crankshaw has crossed state lines with fraudulent property filings. We've traced similar operations in Ohio and Indiana. This is no longer a local case. It's a federal RICO case now. My head spun. It had started as a fight for my lake. Now it was a multi-state criminal investigation. Can you attend the HOA meeting Saturday? Agent Bennett asked. We want her to feel untouchable. While we move in. Saturday came draped in gray clouds and that heavy stillness before a storm. The lake looked like glass. The parking lot at the community center overflowed with cars, neighbors, reporters, and what I now realized were federal agents disguised as county workers. Belinda sat at the front like a queen on her throne, navy blazer, hair perfect, smile brittle. Dale sat beside her, his phone never leaving his hand. He looked like he expected the world to crash down at any second. The meeting started like any other. Boring reports, landscaping updates, legal reminders. The usual HOA theater, but the pressure in the room was thick, like everyone could sense something was about to happen. Then Rebecca stood up slowly. I have a question, she said, her voice ringing clear across the room. About the $147,000 in unpaid easement fees owed to Mr. Trenton by the HOA for lake access rights. And just like that, the house of cards began to fall. The room went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioner kick on like it was the only sound in the world. Belinda's pen froze mid-stroke. Her face didn't move, but I could see her knuckles whiten as she clenched the table's edge. Rebecca held her ground, her voice steady. That number comes directly from the contract Belinda signed when she attempted to renew the marina lease using Marcus Trenton's forged signature. Someone gasped. Dale shifted in his seat like the floor had suddenly gotten hot. Belinda tried to laugh it off. That's absurd. We've already addressed this. The lease? No. Belinda, Patricia Wang interrupted from the back of the room. You forged it. We have expert handwriting analysis and a sworn affidavit from the notary you claimed was present. He was out of the country that entire week. Whispers turned into murmurs. People started turning their heads. eyes locked on Belinda like she was a wounded animal in the center of a pack. Then came the moment I'll never forget, the click of heels on linoleum as Special Agent Lisa Bennett walked in flanked by two officers. Belinda Crungshaw, Dale Crungshaw, Agent Bennett said, pulling a folded document from her coat. You are under federal investigation for fraud, forgery, bribery, and conspiracy to commit racketeering across state lines. Belinda stood up fast, knocking her chair backward. This is a mistake, she shouted. You don't understand. I was trying to protect the community. This is political. Her voice cracked as two agents stepped forward and placed her in cuffs. Dale didn't even argue. He just slumped in his chair, hands out, surrendering like he knew the end had come long before today. As they were let out, someone from the crowd shouted, "What about our dues? You stole from all of us." Another voice added, "She lied to us for years, and we let her." The betrayal wasn't just mine anymore, it belonged to every homeowner who'd paid fees, obeyed rules, and trusted a monster in a business suit. The next week was chaos. The sheriff's office took over control of the HOA, while the feds combed through decades of records. A forensic audit uncovered nearly $500,000 in misappropriated funds, phantom maintenance projects, kickbacks to Belinda's brother's construction firm, and loans secured against the HOA itself with forged homeowner signatures. More shocking was what they found in the emails, dozens of property deals where Belinda had pressured or manipulated elderly homeowners into selling below market value. Then she'd flipped the properties through shell companies she controlled. She'd made a fortune off fear and confusion. It wasn't just illegal, it was evil. But amidst the collapse, something amazing happened. The community, free from Belinda's grip, started rebuilding. Not just physically, though we did plenty of that too, but emotionally. Jerry organized a neighborhood cleanup day. Patricia hosted a town hall to start rewriting the HOA bylaws. And Rebecca, with that same steady voice that once taught fourth graders, stood up and proposed a motion to dissolve the current HOA and form a new one with actual community input and transparency. The vote was unanimous. 2 months later, I stood back on my dock. The lake was calm again. No strangers, sneaking photos, or whispering threats. Just the sound of kids laughing somewhere down the shoreline. Jerry grilled burgers while Rebecca poured sweet tea. For the first time in years, we weren't just neighbors, we were something closer to a family. Emma eventually returned to school. Her grandmother took custody. When I saw her walking to class one morning, backpack bouncing and braids swinging, I felt something lift from my chest. She didn't deserve any of this. None of us did. Belinda's trial is set for early next year. The charges keep stacking. But justice isn't just about prison. It's about truth finally taking root where corruption once ruled. And as for me, I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted peace. But sometimes peace demands a fight. And if you're going to fight, make sure you win so loudly that no one ever dares to steal your land, your name, or your lake again. The trial began on a rainy Monday morning. The kind where clouds hang low like the sky itself is holding its breath. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, cameras, and people from our own neighborhood who never used to speak to each other, now standing side by side. Bonded by what we'd lived through, Belinda walked in wearing a tailored gray suit and a forced smile, flanked by two attorneys who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Dale wasn't with her. He'd already taken a plea deal and was cooperating with the prosecution. That betrayal stung her the most. You could see it in her eyes. Her empire was crumbling, and this time, no fake citations or closed-door meetings could save her. The prosecution came out swinging. They laid out every lie, every shell company, every forged lease and shady deal, projecting documents on a screen that turned the courtroom walls into a crime scene. They called homeowners to the stand. Miss Clara from Sycamore Drive, who lost her home after Belinda reassessed it without cause. Then Jorge, whose application for solar panels was rejected 5 times while Belinda approved them for her own house without a vote. When it was my turn to testify, I walked past Belinda without looking at her. I didn't need to. I knew she was watching. I told the court what she did to us, how she sent surveyors onto my land without permission, how she fined us into silence, how she threatened and isolated anyone who spoke up. But I also told them about what came after, how we rebuilt, how we stood up. The defense tried to twist it, said Belinda was a visionary who was simply enforcing high standards. They blamed her assistants, claimed she was misled, but it was weak. Everyone could see it. This wasn't about maintaining order. It was about control, power, greed. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. When they came back and read the verdict, guilty on all 17 counts, there was no cheer, no applause, just silence, heavy and final. Belinda blinked, almost as if she couldn't believe it, that for the first time, someone told her no and meant it. She was taken into custody immediately. Outside the courthouse, it started raining again, but no one moved. We just stood there, soaking wet, faces tilted toward the sky like we'd finally found the sun behind all the gray. The next few weeks felt like turning a page we'd been stuck on for years. The new HOA board, made up of real residents, started publishing open records. Every meeting streamed online. Every decision voted on fairly. People started planting gardens where fences used to be. Neighbors shared tools, watched each other's pets, helped fix broken fences. And then came the day we tore down the sign. That ugly iron gate with the polished letters that read Lakeshore Executive Community, Private HOA Managed Property. We ripped it out and replaced it with a simple wooden welcome post, carved by Silas himself. Just said, "Welcome to Lakeshore. All are welcome." We held a block party that night, bonfires, music, kids racing around with sparklers. And as I stood there watching it all, I saw something I never thought I'd see. Again, hope. Real, living, breathing hope. A little girl tugged my sleeve. It was Emma. She looked up at me with wide eyes and asked, "Did we win?" I knelt down, smiled, and said, "Yeah, sweetheart, we did." But what I didn't say, what I couldn't say in that moment was, this winning doesn't mean the fight is over. It means we earned the right to keep fighting. To stay vigilant, to protect what we rebuilt, because people like Belinda don't vanish. They wait, they watch, and sometimes, they come back with a new name and a new plan, but this time, we're ready. So if you're listening, wherever you are, and someone like Belinda is trying to steal your land, silence your voice, or poison your community with fear, remember this. You are not alone. You are stronger than you think. And when enough of us stand together, even the mightiest tyrant falls. Every single time. 6 months later, the neighborhood was unrecognizable in the best way. Gardens bloomed where weeds once choked the sidewalks. Families who used to keep their blinds closed now waved from porches. The lake sparkled again, no longer a backdrop to secrets, but a reflection of healing. Belinda was serving 18 years. Dale got 7. The funds they stole, mostly recovered, thanks to federal asset seizure. But the real win wasn't the money. It was the freedom, the peace, the way kids laughed freely again, and old neighbors started new conversations. The best part? That HOA, the one that ruled, with fear is gone. In its place stands a community. Not perfect, not fancy, but honest. And finally, ours. If Belinda ever thought she could take that from us, she clearly didn't understand one thing. We don't break. We rebuild. Stronger. Together, forever. The room fell silent like the moment before a storm breaks. Belinda's smile faltered like a flickering light bulb that knows its time is up. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," she said, her voice stretched thin. Tom Henderson rose next, voice steady with purpose. "The 1999 county agreement. The one requiring $12,000 annual payments for lake access. The one we haven't paid since 2017. A rustle of chairs followed. One by one, neighbors stewed. Jerry Kowalski, Betty Henderson, then a dozen more. Eyes that once looked away now, burned with truth. They knew Belinda's poise shattered. "This is a coordinated attack by outside agitators." The back door creaked open. Agent Bennett stepped in, the FBI badge catching fluorescent light like a sword drawn at dawn. Her voice cut through the silence. "Belinda Crungshaw, you are under arrest for racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud." The click of handcuffs was sweeter than any victory song. Gasps filled the room. Phones rose. The moment was history, unfolding in real time. Dale Crankshaw made a move toward the exit, but Deputy Martinez was already waiting. "Dale Crankshaw, you're also under arrest." Live news crews caught it all. The Crankshaws. The betrayal, the justice. Belinda screamed, accusing everyone but herself. But I was ready. I stood, manila folder in hand, and walked to the front of the room. "Actually, Belinda, let's talk about who's been stealing what." I held up the easement agreement. "This document requires $12,000 per year. You haven't paid in 8 years. That's $147,000 with interest. And because of that, 31 of you no longer legally have lake access." The murmurs turned to outrage. Then came the shell companies. The forged sales. The harassment campaigns. The $250 monthly marina fees that should have been $200. 15 years. $36,000 stolen right from their pockets. Belinda buckled in her seat as voices rose. Jerry, Betty, Rebecca, Tamal naming the violations. The lies, the way they were driven from their homes. Agent Bennett held up evidence bags. Forgery, bribery, mail theft, conspiracy. We have it all, Belinda shrieked as she was led out. This isn't over. My lawyers will destroy you. Agent Bennett didn't flinch. Ma'am, you're facing 37 federal charges. Your lawyers will be very busy. The doors slammed shut, behind them, like a gavel, striking final judgment. 6 months later, the air smelled like barbecue and redemption. Over 300 people filled the lakeside for the first Lake Freedom Festival. Kids laughed. Neighbors smiled. The water shimmered, clean and clear. Belinda served 18 months. Dale got 2 years. The FBI seized everything: house, cars, boats sold, to compensate the victims. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about what came next. The new HOA slashed dues by 45%. Property values soared. Honest budgeting replaced fear and secrecy. The marina fees. Now they actually paid for maintenance. Rebecca jogged over, envelope in hand, her smile bright as summer light. We'd been dating for months. Turns out, nothing bonds people like fighting corruption. Inside the envelope, a $25,000 state grant for environmental restoration. The community was healing. The Hendersons became our unofficial grandparents. 42 kids joined the sailing program. First on the list, Emma Crankshaw, writhing, smiling, finally free from the storm her parents created. The marina now generated funds for real things: playgrounds, repairs, access ramps. My uncle's old slips weren't just boat storage. They were reborn as the heart of a community. And then Jerry came over with the best news of all. The documentary about our fight won a regional Emmy. A national legal clinic was launching. Inspired by us, they called it the Lake Winnebago model. Other states followed. New laws passed. People took notice. What started as one corrupt HOA unraveling became a movement. That evening, I stood on the dock where it all began, stars glimmering across the lake like promises kept. The Silas Trenton Scholarship named for my uncle would now help kids like Emmett Chase, futures brighter than the ones they were handed. Because in the end, this wasn't just about property lines. It was about what neighbors owe each other. Courage over comfort. Justice over silence. And the belief that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. The morning after the town hall felt like the eye of a hurricane, eerily calm, but no one dared believe the storm had passed. People peeked through blinds, watched news vans roll by, and waited. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. Some said the FBI was building a case. Others claimed Belinda had already skipped town. But I knew better. Narcissists like her don't run. They circle, they scheme, and they strike back. Sure enough, 3 days later, I found a certified envelope stuffed in my mailbox. Cease and desist, it read in bold red type. Signed by Crankshaw and Associates, a shell firm, conveniently operated out of Dale's brother's apartment. They were accusing me of harassment, slander, and inciting hostility against a lawful HOA. I laughed. The envelope smelled like fear. I wasn't alone anymore. Rebecca showed up on my porch that afternoon, holding 2 boxes of evidence: emails, payment receipts, even a burner phone Belinda had used to anonymously report her own residence to code enforcement. You said to find the missing puzzle pieces, she said. I brought the whole damn puzzle. We spread the papers out across my dining table, piecing together timelines, matching aliases to bank accounts. What we uncovered wasn't just HOA mismanagement, it was racketeering on a level that would make the mafia take notes. The Crankshaws had created 6 shell companies to siphon HOA funds, landscaping contracts that never existed, security payments to a company registered in Panama, and fake repair invoices signed by dead contractors. Over $1.2 million laundered in under a decade. I contacted Agent Bennett again. This time, I had more than suspicions, I had proof. She listened, took notes, and requested the full boxes. You may have just cracked this wide open, she said. But the Crankshaws weren't done. The very next night, my tires were slashed. My cameras caught nothing. The sheriff couldn't confirm intent. The HOA filed a new violation against me for storing hazardous material on my driveway. It was a bag of mulch. That was the tipping point. Jerry, the war vet who'd once told me to lay low, knocked on my door that evening. He handed me a folder and said, "If you're going to war, don't go alone." Inside were statements from over 20 residents, each one detailing their experiences with threats, inflated fees, forged fines, and secret liens. Some had nearly lost their homes. The day of the emergency HOA board vote arrived like Judgment Day. The clubhouse overflowed. Camera crews lined the back wall. Belinda sat at the front, flanked by Dale and their lawyer, looking smug. She opened the meeting like nothing had changed. "We're here today to discuss defamatory behavior by certain individuals intent on dismantling this peaceful community." I stood, and I read the names of every shell company, of every fake invoice, of every signature traced back to her or Dale. The room rippled with gasps and murmurs. Then Rebecca played the audio, Belinda's voice, on a burner phone, threatening to ruin a single mom if she didn't pay an expedited fence permit fee. "You have no right," Belinda shouted. "You have no soul," I replied. Agent Bennett entered then, right on cue, with 2 deputies. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. "Belinda Crankshaw, Dale Crankshaw. You're both under arrest." The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, someone cried. Jerry stood tall and saluted the officers as they led the Crankshaws out in cuffs. Belinda tried to scream something about character assassination, but no one cared. The truth had drowned her out. That night, the lake was still for the first time in years. It didn't feel like a boundary line. It felt like a mirror reflecting a community beginning to heal. Kids rode their bikes again. Couples walked dogs, without fear. Someone even put up twinkle lights by the dock. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were reclaiming. A month later, a new HOA board was elected comprised of people who actually lived in the neighborhood and cared about it. Dues dropped by 30%. The marina was reopened to all residents. The playground was repaired, and a mural went up on the clubhouse wall painted by Emma Crankshaw, now living with her aunt, smiling again. As for me, I went back to restoring Uncle Silas's boat slips. The dock became more than wood and nails. It became the place where neighbors met to laugh, to plan, to dream. And every time someone asked how we beat them, I gave the same answer: one truth at a time. 'Tis funny how silence can mean so many different things. When Belinda ruled the neighborhood, silence meant fear. Now, silence meant peace. Real peace. The kind you earn after a war. The kind that settles into your bones after you've stared down darkness and lived to tell the tale. 6 months had passed since the arrests. Belinda and Dale had pleaded not guilty, of course. But the paper trail didn't lie. The FBI had everything: receipts, bank transfers, audio recordings, fake company filings, even that smug little memo Dale had written titled, "How to Get Rich Without Getting Caught." Poetic justice. Their trial was scheduled for early spring. They wouldn't see a day of sunshine before then. The community changed fast. Like a garden finally freed from concrete, everything bloomed. Rebecca became the new board president. Jerry was voted in as treasurer. Maya started a block safety team and walked kids home from the bus stop with a bright yellow vest and a big grin. People who used to hide now waved from their porches. Some even started hosting cookouts again. We were neighbors again, not suspects. Emma, Belinda's daughter, surprised everyone the most. She returned to school, joined the mural club, and painted something stunning on the old HOA office wall. It was a phoenix, wings wide, rising from cracked earth. Beneath it, she wrote, "We rise together." Some nights I still sat by the lake, watching the moonlight dance across the water. I'd think about Uncle Silas. How angry he would have been, but also how proud. The dock we rebuilt in his name had become the heart of the neighborhood. Kids fished off it. Teenagers made TikToks on it. Weddings were planned near it. It was no longer a forgotten platform, it was a promise, nailed together with every ounce of grit we had left. But not everything healed cleanly. One day, I received a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. "You think this is over?" It's not. I still have friends in high places. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name. I burned the letter. Let her watch. Let her rage. Let her whisper through the bars of whatever cold cell she called home. She lost. We won. Not because we fought dirty, not because we tore her down, but because we stood together. Because truth louder than threats, stronger than greed, always rises. And when it does, even the most ruthless HOA queen can't stop it. So if you ever find yourself staring down the barrel of corruption, remember this: You don't need to be loud. You just need to be right. The rest will echo through every streetlight, mailbox, and cracked driveway until justice rings loud. Enough for everyone to hear. We were silenced once. Never again. Spring came early that year. Not in the calendar sense, but in the way the neighborhood felt. Lighter. Like something oppressive had finally lifted. The lawns looked greener. Even the birds sounded louder. Number 1 said it out loud. But we all felt it freedom. It wasn't just the end of Belinda's reign. It was the beginning of something we didn't know we could have. There were still scars, of course. People don't forget the fear of losing their homes overnight. They don't forget the knock on the door, the threats, the shame. But scars also tell stories of survival. One by one, the families who'd left started coming back. The Lopez's reclaimed their home after it was wrongfully foreclosed. Ms. Patterson, who'd lived in hiding after Belinda tried to evict her over garden gnomes, was welcomed back with flowers and apologies. We hosted a neighborhood potluck to celebrate, and for the first time, everyone actually showed up. Even the grumpiest guy on the block brought brownies. They were dry as hell, but it didn't matter. He smiled when he handed them over. And me. I finally finished rebuilding Uncle Silas's dock. Every single plank was sanded by hand. The name, Silas Johnson Memorial Pier, was carved in bold oak, burned deep so it would never fade. At the dedication, I stood beside Rebecca, Jerry, and Maya. The sun was setting, the water was calm, and I told the crowd the truth. This dock, I said, was never about boats. It was about roots, about standing our ground, together, when everything tried to rip us apart. They clapped, they cried. Even the sheriff showed up off duty, no badge, just a neighbor now. He helped raise the flag. But life has a way of testing you right when you start to breathe again. One quiet Sunday morning, Rebecca called me. Her voice shook. "They're trying to appeal the charges," she said. Belinda hired a new lawyer. A big one. Political connections. I felt that old cold return to my gut. But it didn't stay long, because this time, we weren't scrambling, we were ready. We had statements, signatures, surveillance. We had a neighborhood united by fire and betrayal, and stronger for it. We weren't just defending ourselves anymore. We were protecting something sacred, our right to live without fear. When the appeal hearing arrived, we packed the courtroom. Not in protest. In presence, to show the system that it couldn't be fooled again. The judge reviewed the files, listened to the new defense, then gave a single quiet nod. Motion denied. Belinda didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, stone-faced, as her second chance vanished like smoke. Her final play had failed. And this time, she knew it was over. That night, fireworks went off over the lake. Not official ones. Just a few Roman candles launched by teenagers who couldn't hold it in. No one stopped them. We watched from the dock, laughter mixing with echoes across the water. Rebecca handed me a beer. Jerry toasted with sweet tea. Maya danced with her daughter on the pier like no one was watching. We weren't just residents anymore. We were a family. A family forged, not by property lines or HOA rules, but by resistance. By truth, by the refusal to be broken. Belinda had built an empire of fear. We replaced it with hope. And if you asked anyone standing there that night what they remembered, most not the lawsuits, not the scandals, it was the moment we stopped being afraid. Because fear fades, but justice lingers. And sometimes, it echoes forever.